interesting to hear about the fact that your collection is in that kind of shape, because I always used to imagine the idea that I would come down here for the summer sometime and rent a cheap room somewhere and spend the summer, maybe just a few hours a day, but depending upon how interesting I found it and how hot it was up in the attic, organizing the stuff, putting it in boxes, alphabetizing it, generally getting it into shape. Of course, that was in the days when I was freelancing and my time was a bit more my own. Now with the military book club, my responsibility, I can't imagine when I'd be able to do it. No salutes necessary, Ms. Weisskopf. All right. What are you doing over there?
I'll Feder.
You gave me a Hitler salute? All right.
Actually, I do have a few fanzines organized. I kept some of my oldest fanzines together in proper chronological order and have them in separate envelopes, but I'd say 98% of the accumulation is just chaos.
Uh-huh. Now, what kind of editing were you doing in the newspaper?
I did everything. I did reporting, I did column writing, I did editing, I did layout, makeup.
Uh-huh.
And what was the name of the newspaper?
The Hagerstown Morning Herald and Daily Mail.
Uh-huh.
There are two separate newspapers published by the same firm in the same building.
Now, you mentioned that
different staffs.
you were working there at night?
Yeah, I worked at night for the first 25 years or so.
Uh-huh.
From mid-afternoon until midnight or later. Then I switched gradually to
Family schedule.
hours.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I did photography.
Was that out of choice or necessity that you worked at the night shift?
No, I started out because the opening was on the morning paper.
And the morning paper produced the night before. That makes sense. All right. I didn't like get into the whole newspaper question. Yeah, I just raised that question because I was wanting to see if I could make some kind of a point about, how an editor needs to have organized way of thinking and be good at organizing other people's thoughts in their writing. And I'm trying to jive that with the jumble of the fanzine collection as opposed to this lack of organization. But I guess I'm not really sure it's a fair question.
Rationalize our own jumble.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Let's finish up with the question of the letter of locks. Anyway, do you have any sense of how long it takes you to write a typical lock?
Probably half hour
Half an hour.
on the average.
How much is half an hour times 10,000?
5,000.
5,000 hours. Yeah.
Divided by 24.
And how many days is that?
200.
Figure a 40-hour week.
Roughly.
Well, let's say it's been 1 year of your life.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
208 days.
208 days.
Yeah.
That
Can be the name. That could be your biography.
And then ripping open the envelopes takes another couple
All right.
months.
Anyway.
Actually, since my eyes started to go bad, it takes longer to read a fanzine than to write a lock on it.
That's interesting. Do you have any other hobbies outside of fandom?
I used to do a lot of photography as a hobby, but I've gotten out of that in recent years, so I guess music would be my main hobby now.
I noticed you're still getting popular photography, and it's still an issue.
Yeah, I still
in the
subscribe
kitchen.
to that,
Uh-huh.
but I haven't taken pictures on a regular basis for the last 10, 12 years.
And what does it do with music?
I still try to play the piano, and I collect records, and I tape stuff off the air, read a lot of books about music, collect music, and
You collect sheet music.
yeah.
Huh. Now let's pursue that a little bit further, because I know you've written somewhere recently that there was a point in your life when you could have imagined going into music as a career if things had gone differently. Looking back at it now, what might you have done conceivably?
Well, I was a fairly good pianist. I probably could have polished up my technique enough to play professionally. I had a radio program for a year or two over the local station.
You had a radio program?
Yeah,
I never knew that. That's really interesting. What kind of a radio program?
just a little piano recital once a week.
Classical music?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I took up the oboe. I played in a local symphony orchestra for a while. I had a chance to take lessons at the Curtis Institute from the first oboist with the Philadelphia Orchestra, Marcel Tabateau. If I had done that, I almost certainly could have gotten a good spot with a symphony orchestra, a major symphony orchestra.
Wow. That's fascinating. I didn't realize it was really that serious. It's very
I tried to do
impressive.
some composing, and a couple of people who knew something about music thought I had some talent in that respect.
Wow, Warner's first
Well,
symphony.
what stopped you?
I love it.
Mainly doubts about my amount of talent and about my ability to handle a musical career from the standpoint of endurance and nervous tension. I didn't know whether I had the right disposition and the right physical qualifications. Music can be very hard work.
Yeah, it's a lot less steady, at least at first, especially, than other kinds of work you've done. Now, your first real full-time job was with the railroad, I think?
Yeah, Pennsylvania Railroad.
Okay, what to do for the railroad? How'd that come about?
Well, I needed work, and I had an uncle who had worked for the Western Maryland Railroad. He told me some people to contact, and I got a job as clerk at the freight station and the passenger station. Curiously enough, I still go to the freight station every day because it's now Goodwill Industries secondhand store. And I get a lot of secondhand
Books and records, right. That's interesting. How long did you work for the railroad?
Not too long. Then I found an opening with the newspaper, and I switched to that.
What was your first job with the newspaper? Did you start right out as a reporter, or were you?
Reporting, proofreading, and general factotum.
Mm-hmm. What was your? We don't know much about your educational background, but how far had you gotten in school?
No college, just high school.
Just high school. You ended up being the editor of the paper.
No, not
Yeah.
real, not the general editor.
Or, well, one of the editors.
I was
Anyway.
listed as assistant editor at times and city editor at times. I never knew what I was until the annual directory of editor and publisher came out. Then I looked at it to see what my was this year. Honest to goodness, they would change it almost every year.
That's interesting.
And I would also be listed as art editor or music editor or
Well, music certainly makes sense. Yeah. At what point did you get to start writing your column?
I converted to column writing about 6, 7 years before I retired. I don't remember just when that was.
You sort of achieved elder statesman status on
Yeah.
the paper. So they had you writing about local affairs primarily, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you've often said in when fans like me have attempted to get you to do various sort of public stuff that one of the reasons you don't want to is that you don't want the newspaper to find out that you're some kind of celebrity. You want to explain what you mean about
Well, I've
that?
managed to keep secret my fanish associations in Hagerstown pretty well from the general public. One reason is simply fear of theft.
Uh-huh.
There's been a lot of theft of antiques and antiquities around here, and I don't want people to know I have a lot of valuable old prozines.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting reason I hadn't thought of.
And as I grew older, I knew I wouldn't have much in common with the youngest readers of science fiction. I didn't want to be bothered with fans coming to me and wanting me to talk to them about Edgar Rice Burroughs novels.
Well, what about a convention like Corfu, which is full of fanzine fans, about 100 fanzine fans, and they're just like you.
Well, I don't want to persecute him about
No,
that.
no, I'm just curious, there would be no publicity.
Well, if I started to go to one convention, I'd be expected to go to other conventions. And I just feel I enjoy writing about fanzines more than I do attending conventions.
Yeah, you haven't been seen in so long, you probably could attend as,
But Claude Degnan,
Joe F. Smith
Yeah,
or something.
Richard Bergeron.
Well, no, someone unknown, and then
Unknown, yes,
just
okay, Joe Blow.
Joe F. Smith, and just wander around.
No, there would be some people who would recognize me. I've had scattering of Spanish visitors through the years.
Have you ever traveled outside of Hagerstown and Maryland at all?
I've been around Maryland pretty well. In Pennsylvania, I don't know much about the rest of the nation.
Well, I guess it's time for you to ask the big question.
No, just wait a minute. You guys are jumping ahead on my questions
I
here.
know.
Sorry.
I had a particular way I wanted to frame that question about the whole question of his, insisting on doing primarily epistolary Fanac. Let me see. Yeah, there was just one question ahead of me. I was going to say, earlier what I wanted to get at was whether you thought Fanac was better itself when it was conducted at a distance, Or was it simply that you weren't gregarious? I mean, I couldn't believe you weren't gregarious if you're working at a newspaper, from what I know about typical newspaper offices. So it couldn't just be that you were like pathologically shy or something, the way I suspect maybe Bergeron is. But what do you think? Did you have some like real principle you were upholding about the virtue of Fanac at a distance as opposed to Fanac in person?
No, except that I thought if I went to Spanish meetings and Spanish conventions, I would have pretty much the same sort of experience I would have if I joined the local Elks or the Moose, or took an interest in church activities, while fanzines and the written form of Fanac is something special. It's pretty hard to duplicate anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the written type of Fanac has always appealed to me. That's, to me, the special appeal of fandom.
Something to do with the way you can consider what you're saying when you're writing.
You have freedom of speech.
Say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. People are inhibited in a certain way when they're talking in person, and at the same time.
Yeah, somebody might punch you in the nose.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it works both ways. I mean, there's both a sense that there are some things you can say in writing because you can think about how to couch them properly and be diplomatic or get it precisely right that you might hesitate to say in person. And at the same time, there are some things you would do in person that you can't do in writing. As you say, you punch somebody in the nose if they insult you, and in writing, what you best you can do is write back a nasty letter or write a contrary article or whatever. You know, I guess I can see your point there.
Except for Leland Shapiro.
Leland Shapiro actually going out and punching the guy in the nose.
Well, he
right?
hasn't been around
Getting
many
on a plane,
years.
flying there, punching him in the nose.
And that's why it's helpful to have a house that is hard to find.
And that's why you sent us to the wrong part of
Yeah,
the
If you're
street.
getting mad at me, you're
That's why you
angry
took
with
down all the
the
street
time you got
signs.
here.
Uh-huh. Well, we were just amused more than anything else because of the way the house we found almost, I mean, it wasn't just, we opened one, there were two side doors, and one side door Linda opened it up and there were a pile of books between the outer door and the inner door. And we thought, gee, Harry's collection's overflowing. And then we looked at the windows and all the shades were pulled down. And we said, well, Harry always says the house is really dark inside. You know, so like almost kind
And in
of
the trash were a pile of books too. It's like, oh, really overflowing.
You know, but then I went around to the second door, farther and back, and there were these cats and dogs, and I didn't remember you ever mentioning any cats or dogs. So I was a little bit suspicious, but the way this house was constructed, we thought maybe the front part we were looking at was like a separate apartment or something. And maybe that was the tenant, or I don't know. Anyway, all right, we figured that part out anyhow.
And that's where all your missing mail has gone over the years.
Well, yeah, well, there was no number on the house, which was another reason.
It had to be
we were confused.
423, had to be.
Well, position-wise, it should have been
Position-wise,
423.
had to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there was no mail in the mailbox, or I would have checked it.
Yeah,
that
and even
way.
across the street, you said across the street was what, 420? And across the street was 420.
Yeah. It was really, really funny. All
This
right.
is on Jonathan
Cruel
Street.
caprice of the
Yeah.
gods.
It's the same, if you continue down this street, it becomes Jonathan Street,
Yeah, well,
and there it
that's right on the
is.
edge of the drug zone in Hagerstown.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
we believe it.
Looking at it now, yeah.
I hope those books did not contain this year's supply of drugs for you.
No,
No,
they were just old books.
They were just random old books, and
They
they.
look like the sort of old books that people who don't read books would have, like Treasury of Knowledge or something
Or
like
someone
that.
who had bought a whole big pile of
books at a
books,
sale somewhere and got taken what they wanted.
took the
got
good
rid
ones
of
and
the
threw out a
rest.
few bad ones.
And you know, the main part of the house was brick, the way you described it as being red brick, and then there was this like section in front with shingles or something.
But we were wrong.
We were very wrong. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, particularly when you were on the phone, you said you were looking out the window and you couldn't see anybody.
Well, I don't know what would have happened if somebody had answered the door. All right.
Where's Harry?
What have you
Here
done
he
with
is.
Harry Warner Jr.?
All right.
We want to see his fanzine collection.
Yeah, right. Have you been keeping up with science fiction all these years? You've been reading this stuff pretty steadily?
I've been reading it spasmodically. I usually read a detective book club 3-decker and then I read a science fiction novel.
Huh.
And I find myself reading the science fiction novel impatiently because I know I want to finish it soon so I can get back to the next detective.
So you're a member of the Mystery Guild?
No, I
No,
just...
the detective
The book club is a separate one?
The detective book club has 3 volumes in one. It's the black thing, right?
No,
Walter J. Black
no, they're not black, they're...
No, he says Walter J. Black is the guy
Oh, yeah, he was...
publishes them. Yeah.
who publishes them. Okay.
There's 3 of them reprinted in one volume.
Yeah.
It's like a series?
Yeah, it's a book club. It goes back at least to the 40s.
Oh, okay. All right. And
Yeah.
it still exists?
Yeah, it's still around. You see ads for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny, I haven't heard it mentioned at work, and I would have thought. it would
Well,
have come
I
up.
mentioned it to you, but we know what your memory's like.
All right. Yeah, sorry. So anyway, what I was going to ask was, if you have any particular favorite writers or SF writers or works of science fiction that you think in all these years have made particularly strong impressions on you that you remember with particular fondness.
Well, I'm a great Dr. E. Smith enthusiast.
Uh-huh.
I think he was probably the most influential writer in the history of science fiction. And I feel that much of the change since his heyday has been dilution rather than addition.
Okay. Well, the obvious follow-up question to that is, what did you think of Star Wars, I suppose?
I watched 15 minutes of it and I turned it off.
Oh. A lot of people felt that it was kind of Doc Smith brought to the screen.
Buck Rogers.
Buck Rogers, okay, that's interesting. Let's see.
And I take it you've never seen the sequels either.
No, you never even tried to watch that.
That's too bad. I did enjoy those ones myself. All right. Anyway, back to fandom. I guess the sort of counterpart question here to the last one. You've done Horizons has had 200 issues over 7 decades. It's the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, which I think is incredible. And certainly a unique achievement. I don't think anybody else in fandom has done that or is allowed to get a match at it anytime soon. So, in a way, Horizons is symbolic of your longevity in fandom and your perhaps nearly unique perspective on fan history. So, just as I've asked you about your favorite SF writers and stuff, do you think there are any particular fan historical landmarks that stand out in your mind? Points at which fandom changed or went over a border, or just significant points that, looking back on them, you think have shaped fan history?
Well, obviously the tendency to conventions is watermark in fandom. That was the thing that started to cause the written form of Fanac to decline in favor of the face-to-face type. But I don't think there has been that much change in the general attitude of fans or their interests over the years or their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be pretty much the same now as they were when I got into fandom.
Yeah, it says something that you and Tony can be in the same APA and talk on the same terms and still have a lot in common. It does say something for the continuity in fandom. Well, you didn't quite witness fandom's birth, if anyone did, but you certainly witnessed most of fandom's life to date. Taking a really Stefnal sort of point of view here and extrapolating, what do you think is the future of fandom?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to tell. It looks as if it's going to be more and more dominated by movies and television, comic books. Looks as if the written form of science fiction is going to decline. I think if you went to a typical convention, 3 out of 4 people who were there would not know the existence of the prozines. Not only have they never read them, but they just wouldn't know they exist. And
So I would gather you think the prognosis for fantasy fandom isn't too good either.
I'm afraid not.
Actually, I was going to ask before, talking about conventions. I've heard some debate about how many conventions you actually attended. Now, I know you attended NorEastCon 2 because you were a guest of honor.
That was number 1.
NorEastCon 1, sorry, 1971, right? Yeah, 71?
Something like that.
Yeah, 71. And that was my first Worldcon. I didn't know you yet, really, although I knew who you were in a vague way. And I remember watching you from the balcony of the banquet room where you gave your guest of honor speech. And I think you were at the Worldcon in 74 in Washington, because I remember we spoke on the phone across the hotel late on Saturday, I think, because I had to leave Sunday morning for my sister's wedding, and I hadn't yet managed to find you at the con, but I wanted to meet you. And it was already too late, so the best I could do was talk to you on the phone, even though we were within probably half a mile of each other anyway. It was a pretty spread out hotel. Now, what other cons were you at besides those 2 World Cons?
I believe I went to 5 or 6 World Cons altogether, but I couldn't give you a complete list of them. I just can't remember. I went to World Cons in Boston, New York, Washington. I went to several Philly Cons, and I'm not sure whether I went to any World Con in Philadelphia or not.
Have you ever been to any of the small regional conventions?
Philly Con,
You
that's
said
one.
Phil-
PhilCon.
Yeah.
Well, that's not so small.
Well, it was small in the old days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't gone to any of the others. I think the 74 was my last con, as far as I can remember.
It's interesting.
See, that was your mistake. You should have gone to the more intimate, smaller conventions that are friendlier and
More like the old World Cons in some
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
not
were
such a
interested.
huge circus.
Not to dwell on this excessively, because I've already conceded the point, but we were interested when we got your response to our letter. Some of the ideas you have about what present day conventions are like are kind of interesting. The sort of beer swilling, smoke filled room image you seem to have isn't reflected in reality. For one thing, the great majority of fans don't like being around cigarette smoke at this point, and there's quite a bit of segregation of the smokers and the non-smokers, and I think the smokers are increasingly in the minority.
Well, I think what Harry's point was what's interesting for him is not the socialization that you can get at any other organization
Yeah,
that you share
yeah.
something of interest, but the intellectual concepts and that are transmitted so freely. Something that I think you might be interested in, although it might be too quick for you, are the computer online networks, where freedom of speech is lightning fast and there's communication across the world instantly and very much like a real conversation. CompuServe and the byte information exchange and so forth. They simulate the kind of mad one-page fanzine activity in the early 40s, I think. And in the 50s you get with a lot of people talking about a lot of things, but it's much faster.
No, it's like a cross between that, it's like a cross between publishing and live conversation,
Yeah.
because it's in print, but it's very fast.
And it does have that same kind of exchange of ideas. That is what makes science fiction fandom so special, I think.
Well, I might enjoy that, but where would I find the time for it?
That's true.
I'd have to give up a lot of block writing. And
See, I think in some ways, I think it's better off the way it is, because at least this way, what he writes achieves some permanence.
Yes,
It shows up in someone's fanzine. If it were just ephemerally on the networks, it would be lost forever
yes.
into the ether. And I think maybe we're better off not changing that.
and there is the additional point, I believe on the computer networks, you're never quite sure who is there.
Mm.
And fanzine fandom, you have a fairly good idea of who's going to get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a more defined community.
Yes.
Well, anyway, but carrying on from the previous question about extrapolating the future of fandom, something I've always wondered about when I hear of fanzine collections being lost to us, as Ray Fisher's apparently was last year, is what provision you've made for your collection. I suspect you're going to be with us for a lot longer than you'd like us to think. But what does happen to all that stuff when you're gone?
Well, I'm ashamed to say I've never made the final decision yet. I'm leaning towards Syracuse University, which has a very good collection of science fiction materials. The late Richard Wilson recommended Syracuse to me. All his stuff went up there. And I've been...
And you know that they wouldn't throw out the fanzines and keep the prozines.
Well,
have to check on that.
Just offering them their pick of whatever they want. But I haven't actually written the letters yet. I'm going to have to do that before long.
It's something I want to discuss at Corflu also. We're having a panel on fanzine collecting, which actually will occur sometime the same day as this tape will be shown. I'm not sure at this point before or after, with a discussion of acquisitions and a discussion of the proper way to store them and organize them. And I'd like to get somebody to speak about the sort of legal aspects and of making bequests and so on. I haven't yet found anybody. I just couldn't think of any fanzine lawyers who are likely to come to the con.
Rusty has dealt with several different collections. Rusty Hevlin.
Rusty Hevlin?
Yeah, and he's delved into the question very deeply.
He's
You
not-
might want to talk to him about it.
There are some fanzines in the Pascal collection at the Franklin Library in Philadelphia, but it's like nobody knows where this place is. It's not a generally available collection, that,
Yeah.
and you have to have special permission and so on. So it's sort of a
Yeah, I'm kind of
a
torn
lost
about it
thing.
myself. I mean, even I've thought about it because, you know, I mean, the fact that you know, I'm conscious all the time of having lost a co-editor to an early death, and his collection did not end up with me, and I think it's been dispersed at this point. And I should probably make provisions myself. I mean, you know, you never can tell how you're going to end up.
Well,
And-
you know, if there's a question, anybody can feel free to leave their fanzine collection to me, and I will take
Well,
good care
yeah,
of it.
I feel the same
well,
way.
if you have an executor who
Practically
you know would.
speaking- Practically speaking, you got to give it to somebody who's going to have the space and the resources to
Yeah.
deal with it. And my own feeling has been, on one hand, the academic option is a very good one in the sense that whatever they do keep will be well taken care of, probably. But you do want, I also think for fanzines, it's particularly important that the stuff should go somewhere where fans can have access to it, not just people with a scholarly credential. And that's a tougher requirement because a lot of schools aren't set up for outsiders to come in.
There's a collection at, I believe, the University of Montevallo, is it? The Al Andrews Memorial Fanzine Collection that was started.
Where is that?
Alabama.
Yeah, that's in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And Al Andrews was one of the founders of the Southern Fandom Press Alliance, SAFPA. And there's a complete run of SAFPA there and other things. So that's another academic answer.
Well, when Don Miller died, his collection just ended up in some bookseller who then sold off piles of it, and they ended up somewhere like Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And at various points, various fans found pieces of it, and then
yeah.
ended up being resold at conventions and so on, and
I'm glad it made it back in some way.
at least part of it.
One thing you mentioned in all our yesterdays is that you've always felt unfairly slighted, that you were never given credit for the achievement of having had a visit from Claude Degler without letting him into your house.
Oh.
Why don't you tell us about Claude's
You
visit
sent
here?
him to that other street.
I'd like to.
Well, actually, my mother deserves most of the credit. I was at work when he came,
Uh-huh.
and he tried to get her into the house in my absence, and she said, no way. So he came to the office, and he actually got a room at a hotel in the downtown section, spent overnight in Hagerstown. I talked to him in the evening, and met him again the next day. But he never got into the house. Now, I can't say as much for George Wetzel. George Wetzel did get into the house.
Uh-huh.
George Wetzel is not as famous as Claude, but he was probably just as obnoxious.
Uh-huh.
Your mother knew specifically not to let him in?
Or is it just anybody who came along was not going to get him?
I think that Claude probably turned her off by his general appearance and attitude.
What was he like? What did he look like?
He was raw-boned and sort of a fanatical appearance, and if he is attending this convention, I'm going to be in deep trouble.
No. He hasn't been to a Corflu yet. Actually, I wish
No,
he'd
he hasn't,
come to one. He turned up a few years ago in the Midwest, but
supposedly.
but I don't know anybody who's actually met him.
Nobody has
I mean,
ever
recently.
claimed to have seen him in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But actually, he behaved himself while he was in Hagerstown. He gave me less trouble than some other fan visitors have given me.
And what have they done?
Oh, just been obnoxious to other people, friends of mine, or mistreated the house, done damage to the house, or
I'm glad we fixed that curve.
one of them virtually destroyed my piano.
Oh no.
He played on it for 3 minutes real loud, and it was 3 years before I got it repaired.
Wow. I hadn't thought about it before. Maybe we should get Harry to do a little musical performance for us. That'd be truly unique. We should be getting his facial reaction here as I propose this one. It's really a unique addition to the Corflu program, you know, with musical entertainment by Harry Warner.
Do you still play the oboe and the piano?
I no longer have the oboe. I still try to play the piano, but fortunately it's too badly out of tune to demonstrate on today.
Or so you say.
He always has an excuse. Let me just finish up this topic of the people visiting it. Who else is noteworthy has visited here over the years?
Oh, Ackerman, of course. Bob Tucker's been here several times.
Did you ever have odd fans just pop up on your doorstep and say, hi,
Yeah.
I'm passing through town?
I had one who's under strict orders from his parents not to spend more than 30 seconds talking to me. They were in a hurry to go somewhere. He came to the door and he said, I only have 30 seconds, just want to say hello. And 30 seconds later, wow, he's gone.
Well, at least he didn't impose, but it was frustrating for him.
Did you ever get the urge to get a post office box and operate from it instead?
I have had that urge. So, unfortunately, the town's too small. It would have been too easy for somebody to find me by inquiring at the newspaper office or
Hmm.
otherwise.
Given all the people who visited, but obviously for a tiny minority of fandom, was there ever anybody in fandom you'd like to have met in person that you didn't get to meet?
Oh, lots of fans. I'm very sorry I was never able to meet. I hate to try to go down the list because it's awful long.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I'm pretty
Did
much...
you and Bob Tucker meet in person when you were?
Yeah, Bob Tucker's
any-
been here several times. Ran into him a couple times at conventions. Ackerman's been here about 3 times, I believe.
Did you ever visit other fans in their homes at all?
No, I've never done any visiting.
I'm working on a biography of Tucker.
Oh, good. That's very, very badly needed.
Yeah, I wonder if you have any Tucker stories you'd like to tell.
Hold on a
That
second.
you can read.
Well,
Oh, the lamp doesn't work.
Okay, we were talking about Bob Tucker, and if you could tell me some Bob Tucker stories. And in fact, you have.
and you're saying that you're going to write an autobiography?
Yeah, I'm working on a biography of Tucker, and I've been working on it for several years now, and we'll work on it for several years more. If anyone has Tucker material, by the way, I will. If this makes it into the final cut, I will use this as a plea to send me Tucker fanzines. I will pay good money for them. I will pay for Xeroxes of them. And especially articles that he wrote for early 40s and 50s fanzines. I don't have them. I do have access to his little zombies and his regular zines. So, anyway, back to Harry. Do you have any anecdotes you want to tell about Tucker?
I can't think of specific anecdotes right now, except that he's probably the funniest person in fandom as a writer and as a person. He can amuse me more than anybody in fandom has ever done. And I think he's probably one of the few real geniuses to come out of fandom.
Well, when you were collaborating together, did he tend to take over, or did...
No, we never really collaborated. We might have worked together on the project to get free fanzines to fans who were in the armed forces during the Second World War, but that wasn't the same as collaboration. We never, I wrote for him sometimes, and he wrote for me sometimes, but he was far out of my range as a writer.
Well, now we get to the big question, which Moshe didn't seem to want to ask you earlier. And since he's left the room, we can now ask you, how did you become known as the Hermit of Hagerstown, and is it really true?
I think that the title of Hermit of Hagerstown was bestowed upon me by Larry Shaw. I am not certain about that, but the original tag was the Hermit of Hagerstown. Look for the big red letters on the cave. And that falls flat today because nobody remembers now that Jell-O used to be advertised with the slogan, look for the big red letters on the box. That used to be a very big catchline in the old days, and I think that's where my fame came from. Actually, I'm not a hermit in Hagerstown, or I wasn't until I retired from the job, and now I have become sort of a hermit since I'm not working anymore.
Well, what was it that made them call you the Hermit? I mean,
Because I never went to cons.
Even then, he didn't go to cons.
but you've been to a few, so you haven't been a total hermit.
No, the hermit designation came long before I attended my first con. I went
So
to
they
my
kept-
first con in 1960.
So they kept asking and asking and asking, and you never went.
Yeah.
Did people invite you to their homes and you said, no, I can't go?
I didn't get too many invitations to individual homes. I suppose I could have gotten hospitality if I'd asked for it.
But if they did ask you, you didn't go.
Were you ever active in local politics and in civic groups or anything like that?
I did a good bit while I was with the newspaper. I worked on the Community Action Council, which was the local arm for the Office of Economic Opportunities programs for the disadvantaged. I served for quite a few years on the Adult Education Board of the Board of Education. And I was a director of the Civic Music Association, which brought concerts to Hagerstown. I belonged to the Historic Advisory Committee and the Transportation Advisory Committees of the County Commissioners. Things like that. I never got into the sort of politics where you put yourself up for elective office.
You know, if you'd gone to conventions, you probably would be involved in folk singing with your interest in music.
No,
Did
can't
you-
sing.
Oh, well, you could play. Have you heard folk songs? Did you
Yeah,
ever see-
I've even had one composed about me.
Really?
Les Gerber, the famous New York.
Of course, now we have to ask you to sing it for us after you told us
Probably doesn't know
you
the
can't
words.
sing. But
Well, I can remember
Linda
his
composed
couple-
one about you also.
A couplet was inaccurate.
Today.
He could only think of one interview, of only one rhyme. When he wanted to talk about how many years I'd been around, he said something about drunk 10,000 beers, and I'm a teetotaler.
I thought of one other thing we could do with Corfu in mind, which may wrap things up nicely for the program item, should be considering that everybody at Corfu are people who have had contact with Harry over the years, because they've all gotten letters from him, no doubt, and probably most of them were publishers have sent their fanzines to you. Maybe you want to say a kind of greeting to the people at Corfu. I can't tell you the exact list of who's going to be there, but you can be certain that they're all people you know, at least through the mail. Just want to.
I was thinking we could tape every one of them and send back their hello to Harry as if he had attended.
Yeah, no, he's got a beta machine. It'll be easy.
Well, if you want a message, I will say publish more fanzines.
So, publish more. Will you write more locks to match?
Yes.
Well, guys, you couldn't ask for a better encouragement to Fanac than that. We've been saying in the pre-Corfu publicity that we'd like to match the existing Fanish motto of real soon now with do it now. So I think we can fairly say that Harry is supporting us in that goal. Okay, you guys think of anything else we haven't thought to ask him about that we ought to ask him about?
What did your parents do?
My father was a bookkeeper. They would call him a cost accountant today, but he was a bookkeeper. And my mother just was a housewife. She had worked for the railroad before her marriage.
And they never minded that you read that crazy Buck Rogers stuff?
No, they thought it was fine. Gave me something to do. And they were very good parents.
Did you have any sisters or brothers?
No, I'm the only child.
Typical Fanish pattern.
My parents took one look at me and they decided that's it.
I said that about a lot of us. Did you have a childhood illness? You know, that's also a typical Fanish pattern, that fans as children had illnesses and so on that kept them...
Sort of the Robert Louis Stevenson thing?
well,
that
caused them to read a lot as children.
No really serious illness. I had a tendency to bronchitis. I missed a lot of school with that, and I was rather small and frail as a child.
That's typical.
So you did tend to stay in and read a lot rather than going outdoor activities.
I was incredibly thin until I was in my 40s, I guess.
We don't notice a lot of fat on you, Harry.
I'm much stouter now than I was up till I...
Looking at Harry, you may be getting a preview of what I look like when I'm 60.
Yeah, actually, you look like his son.
I mean, I've also been incredibly skinny all my life, and I'm just coming up on 40 in a couple of years, so we'll see what happens. You know, I weighed myself on the electronic scale in your bathroom, Linda, and it said 133, which is 3 pounds more than I thought I weighed.
Oh, Ron will be happy to hear that, because that means that maybe the scale's wrong.
So maybe I'm about to cross that threshold also, but I hope not. I'd like to stay skinny.
You're leaning into stout fandom.
Did you, Harry, I know you're a big opera fan. Have you ever been to the opera in person?
Yeah, I've attended some operas. Occasionally one comes to Hagerstown. I went to a couple of operas out of town, but it's just a little too time consuming and expensive to
Mm.
go to the big opera companies.
Mhm.
Though I was thoroughly tempted with Brigitte Fassbender was in New York singing in Fledermaus this past winter. I almost went up there to.
My God. Would you have let us know if you were going to do that?
No, it would have just have been an overnight proposition.
Mm.
But I decided $100 or more for transportation, $100 for a hotel room, $50 an airport ticket, $50 for meals. The amount of time and money I would spend on that one performance would buy me a Laserdisc
Uh-huh.
machine and a tape.
See, now you should
And
have
a
bribed
record.
Harry with a laser disc player and a trip to New York
Orphan doesn't
and
have that kind of money. Paying for the trip to New York would have been about it for us. I did say that.
ticket to the opera.
I said we'd pay for his baseball tickets if he wanted to go to the ballpark. Well, I'll tell you, Harry, if you ever attempt it again, I'll put you up so that you can save the hotel bill. And I might even go to the opera with you since I'm a little bit of a fan.
And he lives in a real house with conservative parents and everything.
Yeah.
I've given my nice chance to see Brigitte in live performance. She is switching over to directing operas.
Oh.
But I'll probably eventually get the Laserdisc player, and there's a disc containing her in Fledermaus
Uh-huh.
available on Laserdisc.
I probably can make you a dub. I think it might be available. I'll check it out.
Well, that would be fine.
I'll edit this portion out
It's
of the
not available
tape.
all right.
on video tape on-
I think I might be able to rent it
You
from
rent
my
the
local.
disc and then dub it on tape.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
I'll double check it. I
And
think
Linda
that
has-
Fledermaus.
Linda has the beta hi-fi also, so you get good quality.
Super beta.
Yeah, super beta hi-fi.
Most of the Laserdiscs are also available in videotape, but this particular one is not,
Hmm.
for some reason.
Yeah, we were watching that special Laserdisc of Forbidden Planet at Linda's last night. It's got all this extra material on it about the production. It's really a lot of fun, very fascinating.
I hear the
Lots of
quality
information.
is wonderful.
Quality is excellent, and on Linda's 32-inch monitor, even when it's letterboxed, it still looks very, very good.
I've been afraid to go to see a demonstration of them in the store because I know I'll buy one.
Yeah, you walk right out with it.
Uh-huh. That doesn't stop Linda. She goes out to the electronics show and comes back with a wish list, I suspect.
Yeah. Well, now that you're retired, are you indulging in any other activities besides fanzine activities?
No, just spending more time on music and trying to catch up on all the reading I put off during the 40 years with the newspaper job.
So you finally have plenty to do, or do you find
More
yourself
than
bored?
enough to do. I watched television a little more than I did. I never watched much television before.
Now's your chance to watch the rest of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets better after the first 15 minutes, you know.
No, I liked it all the way through, but anyway. All right, well, I think we may have to actually let him go. I'm not sure I can think of anything else
Yeah.
important to ask about.
Yeah, well, we'll edit this so
We
that
certainly have plenty of
I
material.
think that other ending was better. We'll edit it. This.
Yeah, well, I just figured
Yeah.
we could always rearrange things if we had to. Which, by the way, would you like to have a copy of the tape when we
No,
finish with it?
I really wouldn't.
No? Okay.
I when I was fan guest of honor at the first Northeast Con, they put out a set of 2 LPs containing the major events there. They included my talk at the Hugo Awards banquet. I've never had the nerve to play back that talk. So if you did send me a tape, I would never watch it.
Okay.
Would you want to see yourself on this right now?
No, I'm
Would
just.
that be too traumatic?
All right, hope it comes out well. It looks like we've done a pretty good job, I think.
You certainly have a lot of material to
Thank
choose
you.
from. How long has it been? 2 hours?
Not quite.
Not quite. It's still on
Yeah.
the first tape. Linda, can you tell from that how, is there a counter on it? Where we stand on that?
I can't tell. I didn't zero the memory. I should
Oh.
have zeroed the memory.
All right, let me get back at me. I guess in conclusion, I'd like to just thank Harry for his patience and hospitality and letting us break and enter here and move everything around and rearrange
Get those
the
valuable
furniture and the
prosy.
lights, and so that we could do a good job here. He's been very very gracious, and I'm sure everybody at Corfu is really going to appreciate this, Harry. And thank you very much for being cooperative.
I was sure you would blow some fuses, but you didn't. So
So you forgive us.
that's my only word.
That's the advantage of batteries.
So,
Thank you very much.
thanks everyone.
Okay. All right.